Well, welcome everybody. My name is Mary Hyatt and you are here at the right place at the Mary Hyatt Show. I am honored that you are spending your afternoon with me, especially after a holiday. And for those of you who maybe don't know me, this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I love that you are here. This is such an incredible community of women who are really seeking after finding their true selves. And that is what I am all about. I am a life coach. I am an entrepreneur, and I am a presidential diamond with doTERRA essential oils. So I kind of have this beautiful holistic approach to helping women wake up, find their voice, and to become fully alive. And I'm super excited about the show today because we are going to be delving into kind of a deep topic, which is exploring the concept of good and bad kind of dichotomous thinking. And I'm going to help you understand why that really isn't useful for our everyday lives and can leave us feeling a lot of pressure. It can leave us feeling paralyzed. And I want to get us out of that because that is no fun. But before we get into all of that, let's start the show. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Super excited about our topic today because whether or not you were raised in any kind of specific religion, whether you were raised in a Christian church, which I know a lot of you were, the majority of us are kind of raised with this concept of good and bad, right and wrong, good and evil. And we sort of know, because we've been taught this ever since we were children, that, it's good to help people. It is bad to treat people as less than, it's bad to murder people. It's good to help, elderly people cross the street. And I think that this concept of good and bad morality, works when we're looking at big picture stuff. It works when we're looking at morality and of, the basic kind of principles to be a decent, contributing, human being. But I really feel like it doesn't work in our everyday life. And what's fascinating is that we have a deep-seated fear of being punished. I know that for me, I wouldn't really even use those words because I think as adults, we think, well, what are we going to be punished for? Unless it's some crime, we don't think about being punished. But because we sort of live in this good, bad, right, wrong, good, evil mentality, we still feel like somewhere up there in the sky, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whether it's Allah, whether it's Buddha, whatever, whatever is in the way that we were raised, there's still this punishment that sort of threatens our psyche, that if we make a misstep, we're going to be punished. And there's this deep-seated fear in us because of our history that we will ultimately, if we do the wrong thing, be ostracized from the clan, that we will be kind of removed from the pack. And that's deep. That fear is a cellular memory. That is ancient. That comes from our great grandparents and what it really was like to live way back when. I mean, it really starts, if you think about it, if you have been raised in the Christian faith, it starts of the fear of being cast out of Eden, the Garden of Eden, and that actually, that you might go to hell. I mean, that's where this is bred from, that early belief that there is something that we can do that would be wrong or bad that leads to our damnation ultimately. And, from an ancestral standpoint, from a anthropological standpoint, from a historical perspective, that really did happen for a lot of people. If you didn't follow the guidelines of the particular clan or the tribe or whatever, you would be ostracized, and that meant death. And so somewhere in our cells, we have this memory, somewhere deep inside of us subconsciously, we have this belief that if we do the wrong thing, or if we are bad, we will be left out to die. And the worst fear that we might have is that we are going to live that way for all of eternity. And it's truly a basic fear of separation. And I want to know if this is true for you guys. I know a lot of you guys have been raised in all different kinds of ways. And so I'm curious if this feels real. So if you know what I'm talking about, if you can go, oh yeah, like that's probably true that I have a deep-seated subconscious fear that I'm going to be out of the pack, just type in a number 1 in the comments below, because I want to know if this is true for you. And that's what I love about Facebook, is we get to interact and give me some hearts, give me some thumbs up if this is coming back to you. But what happens is when we have this basic fear, we go into hyper control mode. We want to control everything. We want to make everything black and white. We want to make sure that every decision that we're making is the right decision. So every decision becomes a really crucial decision. We don't want to screw it up. We don't want to do the wrong thing. We don't want to be wrong. And that is so much pressure. And what happens is that when we exist in this kind of thinking in our everyday life, where we feel like our sense of belonging, our sense of worth is based on whether we make the right or wrong decisions, that just feels heavy, y'all. That is going to paralyze you quicker than just about anything. And so we end up getting stuck. We end up not being able to move forward. And I hate that. And I lived that way for so many lives. I literally would go around like trying to manipulate every decision, every behavior, everything that I did to make sure that what I was doing was right, to make sure that I wasn't going to screw it up. And that honestly is exhausting. And you can only keep that up for so long before you go mentally crazy, you crack, or you totally rebel or something. Because we know, y'all know this on an intuitive level, that life is gray, that truly, ultimately, it's subjective. And so what it looks like is, playing safe. It looks like handing over our power to other people. It looks like being obedient. It looks like not questioning. It looks like not speaking up. And I think that a lot of our suffering, a lot of the problems really stem from this belief that I am right and you are wrong. Or my group is right and your group is wrong. Or my leader is right and your leader is wrong. If you think about it, this is the source of all of our arguments, the birthplace of hatred and the root of segregation. If you think about any war, if you think about any conflict in the history of our time, it was bred out of this right and wrong, good and bad, good and evil thinking. And everybody kind of has this superiority complex going on that we think we're right and then somebody else is wrong. And so as long as we exist in one of these choices, it makes it really tricky. And like I said, like good and bad, right and wrong, like that's great from a morality standpoint up here, but when we break it down and it starts getting fuzzy and it starts getting gray and we start, looking at ultimately opinions of what things are right and what things are wrong, it gets like icky. It gets complicated. It gets segregatory. Is that a word? Segregation happens. And that is that is death. Ultimately, it's a different kind of death. And so everything truly is subjective, depending on who you were talking to, depending on where in the country you were raised or where in the world you were raised, depending on what religion you were brought up with, based on the culture that you find yourself in. What we deem as good, what we deem as bad varies from culture to culture. And I've been kind of looking into this a little bit. You know, one of the obvious examples, this is kind of like a little side story. One of the obvious examples that I see is, because I'm doing this course on how to love and accept your body and how to make peace with the mirror, and looking at all of the beauty myths that we experience in the world and how we define beauty and how that's so subjective depending on, you know, where you live and what, you know, era it is. But like, for example, what constitutes modesty? Okay, so, you know, in some cultures, a head covering, you know, I was raised where you didn't show your shoulders. Maybe it is not having your legs shown, you know, but why even ultimately, like, why are we so concerned with modesty? Is it because we want to make sure that men don't stumble? Which is kind of what I was taught. You know, I don't want to be one of these bad girls that makes men stumble. And so somewhere along the way, I was given the responsibility to sort of caretake men's minds. And, you know, why is that my responsibility? You know, what makes that bad? What makes showing your shoulders bad or showing your head bad? You know, it's all based on our belief system, right? It's all based on this subjective idea of what we think is appropriate or not appropriate, or right or wrong. Another example, this is super basic, but it's like how you greet people. You know, in some cultures, you give a bow. Other cultures, you kiss both cheeks. Other cultures like ours, we shake hands or we give hugs. But if you don't kind of know what those rules are, you know, you can end up offending a lot of people because there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And I'm just like so curious. I'm like, who decided that there was a right way to greet people or a wrong way to greet people? But these are kind of societal rules or customs, and they're subjective. Like, you can't say that, you know, it's always, you know, if you don't shake somebody's hand, you're wrong. But we live under this lens where everything is black and white. And so our belonging is on the line. And that is a lot of pressure. And so I think that what we end up doing is creating a lot of subjective rules for ourselves based on our own interpretation, based on the lens that we're looking at life with. And, you know, one person might say, okay, well, you need to do X, Y, Z. And if I don't, it's the wrong decision. Or if I don't play don't play by the rules, that I am a bad person even. And that can lead to horrible, horrible shame. And I've lived that. You know, we start identifying as a bad person. Like, I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. I can't quite get it right. And it breaks our connection with other people too. And so I think what's crazy about this is that it keeps us so rigid. It keeps us so closed off. We can't connect with other people. When we live in right and wrong, good and bad, we can't connect because all of a sudden somebody is kind of a perceived enemy. Now, whether that's a huge threatening enemy or just this person's different than me, and so I don't understand them and they're wrong, so I don't want to create a conversation, or they're not worth my time, or they're not of value to me. I mean, you can see how this creates a lot of disconnection when we're operating out of this place. And neither of the places where we are operating in rigid thinking, or we like are totally rebelling on the opposite end of the spectrum and we're like, well, screw that, I'm not going to even try, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. Both of these aren't connected to our intuition. Both of these aren't connected to our true self, ultimately. And we get stuck in this sort of good girl, good boy, bad boy mentality, and we end up shutting down. Okay, so I need to know from you guys. You guys are awfully quiet today. Is this rocking your boat? Is this making sense? If it is, give me some comment love. I would love to know what you guys are thinking. You can type in a number 2. If this is resonating, just literally type in a number 2. Give me some hearts. Give me some thumbs up. That way I know that this is cranking with you guys. This is a quote from Deepak Chopra, and he said, "If you obsess over whether you are making the right decision, you are basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. The universe has no fixed agenda. Once you make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, only a series of possibilities that shift with each thought, feeling, and action that you experience." God, I love that quote so much. Because ultimately, if you think about all the decisions in your life, okay, truly, if you had decided something else, even if like for me, I've gotten divorced, I got married at 19 or 20. And, was that a mistake? No. Ultimately, that got me exactly where I am right now. A lot of the decisions along the way that we make, whether it's in business or with our bodies or in relationships, at the end of the day, I believe that there is a greater work at play that we can't screw it up. No matter if we make the right decision or the wrong decision, or if we're good or if we're bad, that there's something bigger that covers us, that holds us, that ultimately that we exist in unconditional love. Like, you can't screw it up. Like, that's why I'm like, y'all have a destiny, like you can't screw it up. And this is, to me, true regardless of your, religious faith. There is a purpose for your life. The fact that you are here on this planet is proof enough that you are worthy to be here, that you are enough, that whatever you are bringing to this planet Earth is of value. And if we get caught in wrong or right, it like cuts us off at the knees. We end up getting paralyzed. And I love that you guys are saying, like, yes, you are totally connecting with this. Jim, thank you. Loving your numbers. You said there is a larger story. Yes. So I really think that ultimately, when we exist in bad and good thinking, it can disconnect us from our true selves. And we fear, ultimately that it's going to disconnect us from people. But this good and bad thinking doesn't work in our relationships with 4 areas, okay? And the first area that this good and bad thinking really isn't helpful, really doesn't work, is in our business. Okay, so the first area where this thinking doesn't work is in our business. Now think about this for a second. I was on a mentor call with one of my doTERRA leaders last week, and she was just feeling super discouraged. She was feeling super frustrated because she was hearing all this conflicting advice. Like, somebody said, okay, well, you've got to teach classes this way, and you've got to do it this way, or you need to reach out to this many people and make sure that they buy your essential oils, however many people sign up with you and get a wholesale membership. She was talking about this, and she was like, I don't know what to do. What's normal? What's normal? So she's asking this of me, and I looked at her and I said, girl, I was like, there is no normal. You can't screw this up. You're going to try things and you're going to figure out if that works or not. And then you're going to try something else and see if that works or not. And it's all great feedback. I really don't believe in failure. I don't believe that is possible. And so to me, it's all feedback. You try it, you experiment, and you shift as needed. But there is no right and there is no wrong in business. And I mean, you look all over the internet, there are a million blogs, there are a million podcasts where people are saying, if you don't do, A, B, and C, your business is going to fail, or your business won't take off, and you have to post this many times to Instagram, and at this time and that time, and if you don't do it, you're not going to get followers, or you've got a hashtag in the right way. And there's all these rules that we have created, these things that make it right, the things that make it good. And what happens is that stunts our innovation. That disconnects us from our intuition. And I think that in order to be successful in business, you got to be connected to your intuition. And give me some hearts, give me some love if you've ever felt that way, that like in your business, you're so scared that you're going to screw up and make the wrong decision and that your business is going to fail. Or if you don't do this program, or if you don't use this system, or if you don't sign up for this or sign up for that, then ultimately you're going to fail. I think that is, just so true that we feel that way because we're sold that. And you guys are giving those hearts and thumbs up. Thank you. But there are a million ways to build a business, and everyone is going to tell you what to do. Everyone's going to tell you this and that. And the hilarious thing about all of this is that they contradict each other. Like, one person's going to say, do this. Another person is going to say, never do that same thing. Like, they are always like conflicting with each other. And this is where you have to go, what is true for me? And what do I know that feels right at this time? Like, for me, I have a million options out there of what I could do with this knowledge. I could do a podcast. I could write a book. I could go do retreats. I could do webinars. I could do only group coaching. I mean, there's so many options, for what I could do with my business. And what works for me isn't necessarily what's going to be true and what works for someone else. And so that's where I have to really anchor into myself and to where I'm at the season of life and all of that and go, okay, what feels good for me? What feels right for me? And part of the issue is that sometimes we feel like every decision that we make ultimately is going to lead to us being successful or not. And if we choose the wrong thing, like if we choose the wrong system or the wrong platform to build our website on, or I do Facebook Live at, 1 o'clock on Wednesdays when I should have done it, at 2 o'clock on Thursdays, and that success ultimately can lead to, or that those decisions can lead to my success or my failure, which ultimately at the end of the day leads to my sense of self-worth, which is crazy. And I love that Brene Brown talks about shame a lot, because I think this is really important when we're looking at really any kind of situation, but in our business, because she says, shame becomes fear. Fear leads to risk aversion. Risk aversion kills innovation. The secret killer of innovation is shame. And shame is birthed out of the deep fear that we all have been wrong, or that we will all do it wrong. So basically, if I think I'm going to do something wrong and that creates shame, I'm going to stop stepping out. I'm going to stop trying things. I'm not going to take any risks anymore, because my sense of worth, my value is on the line. My sense of belonging, whether I fail or succeed, is on the line. Like that is, that's heavy. So if we can release this and take it off the table for a hot second and say there is no right or wrong in business, and that ultimately at the end of the day, I am protected, that I can't miss my destiny, that I can't screw it up at the end of the day. I mean, I really believe that in the core of my being, that I can't screw it up. Debbie, you said, thank you. Finding the right way is someone's opinion. I always feel that I am not doing enough. Yeah, like how many of you guys feel that you're not doing enough? I think that is so common. And when we feel that way, it's almost like, well, I might as well not even try. It's like so defeating. And so if we can get rid of this right and wrong, good or bad, and just look at, this is what is right now. I'm here to learn. I am here to be taught in the school of life, that everything that happens in my day is here for me. Nothing is happening to me. I'm not a victim of my circumstance, but everything is happening for me. There's a lesson in everything. As my mom would say, what does this make possible? So you can't screw it up. Being open to seeing the value of everything, whether it's a challenge, whether it's an obstacle. That doesn't mean that you've done the wrong thing or that you're a bad person. It's just feedback so that you can shift, that you can mold, that you can become strong, you can gain resilience and courage. All right, so the second area that I think that this good and bad thinking really doesn't work is in our relationships with other people. And this is really interesting. So when we exist in good and bad, right and wrong, especially right and wrong here, this creates some crazy freaking codependency, you guys. Like this is where we start caretaking everybody else's feelings, because all of a sudden, even if I don't want to do something, if I think it's the right thing to do, then it becomes a should. Then it becomes an obligation. Then it becomes a duty. I have to do this or else I'm a bad person. Like, for example, maybe a good thing to do is to open the door for somebody. Now, if I think that the right thing to do is to open the door for somebody, if I don't, then all of a sudden I'm a bad person. All of a sudden my worth, my value as a human being is on the line, whether or not I had the energy to open the door for somebody or let somebody out in front of me in a line of cars, or really in deep, intimate relationships. This is where it gets really hairy, gets really, really gray, is that, if I have a belief that like for several years, for example, I was away from my family. I needed to create some boundaries, and I didn't go to family Thanksgiving for like 5 years in a row. Now, that could have made me a bad person if I believed that the right decision, the right choice would be to show up for those holidays. Or maybe the belief is that I'll be a bad person if I say no to helping somebody clean up after an event. So all of a sudden we start saying yes to everything. All of a sudden we start people pleasing. All of a sudden we have no more boundaries. So the reason that this doesn't work, this right or wrong, good or bad thinking in relationships, is that because it has zero room for boundaries. It has zero room for needing to go take a break or to say no or to have some healthy distance. There's no room for that in this kind of thinking. And what ends up happening is that it leaves no room for freedom. And then we end up being a slave. And then what happens with that? We end up getting incredibly resentful of the people in our lives because we feel like they're making us show up when we don't want to. We feel like they are making us say yes when we want to say no. We feel like they are putting all this pressure and we have no choice because it's the right thing to do because we want to be a good person. And guys, all of that is subjective. And oftentimes, especially in relationships, when people basically put it on us that we should show up for them in a certain way, that is very dysfunctional. That is some heavy level codependency that is very dysfunctional. And so this doesn't work when we are under this kind of weight of good and bad, right or wrong as human beings when it comes to dealing with other people. It doesn't make me a bad person if I say no of hanging out with some of my friends tonight because I'm just too tired. Or if I say no to taking on a new responsibility or whatever it is. I mean, it's like I can say that. I can have boundaries. I have the freedom, and that what you think is right for my life or what you think is wrong for my life, or you think I should do this or shouldn't do this, and that makes me a good or bad person, it's not up to you. And you guys are saying, I'm speaking to you, you're getting this. And that's a big piece of the puzzle, is that in our relationships, when we feel like our belonging is on the line, that dictates our behavior and how we show up in a relationship with other people, we are always going to be doing things we don't want to do and ending up being resentful. And so we have to check in with ourselves. Okay, so the two areas that we've covered so far where this good, bad thinking doesn't work very well is in our business and in our relationship with other people. And here's the one that I think is really huge, that of course you guys know I love to talk about, is in our relationship with our bodies and with food. This to me is the most clear because we exist in right and wrong and good and bad in our diet culture every single day of our lives. And basically, it's good to be thin, it's bad to be fat. It's good to eat salads, it's bad to eat pizzas. It's good to go to the gym, it's bad to sleep in. And we think to ourselves, if I don't go to the gym X amount of times during the week, then I'm a bad person. Or I'm only good when I'm starting a new diet. That is good behavior. And the truth is, and this is like mind-blowing to me, is that these things are not inherently good and not inherently bad. Salads aren't good or bad. Pizzas aren't good or bad. Fat is not good or bad. Thin is not good or bad. Going to the gym is not good or bad. It's only good or bad when we attach meaning to it. It's only good or bad when we start to interpret it in a certain way. It's only good or bad when we attach kind of this morality value to it and when we assign the meaning to it. By itself, whether, if we want to go move our bodies or if we want to eat this or if we want to eat that or whatever it is, that's all just like, neutral until we start assigning whether it's good or bad. But that definition of what makes something good or what makes a food good or bad or what makes our bodies good or bad or right or wrong, that creates so much pressure for ourselves. And I think that this is something that we deal with every single day, whether you're somebody who is has an issue, struggle with eating, like if you have a dysfunctional way of looking at eating or a disordered way of eating, or if you don't even think about food that much at all, you're probably thinking about this. You're probably somewhere subconsciously thinking, well, okay, if I eat this cookie, then I'm going to have to go work out tomorrow, or I can't eat this cookie because that would mean that I am somebody who can't control myself or whatever. We put all of this energy, all of this stuff onto these decisions that all of a sudden, again, our worth, our value, our sense of belonging is on the line. whether or not that we have a right to be in this world or be a good person or a bad person, all of a sudden is reduced to whether we eat a cookie or not. And that's a lot of freaking pressure. That's obviously why I'm creating my online course all about body love, all about accepting our bodies now, rejecting diets, intuitively eating, intuitively moving. But when we interpret things as this way, what we might not realize is that we are ultimately starting to play into fear, or we're starting to play into superiority. My way or the highway, this is the right thing. If you don't do this, you are going to be sick, you're going to be fat, you're going to be sluggish, you're going to be ugly, which is not true, which is so not true, right? I mean, it's like I told my sister a while ago, I said, you can heal on any diet. You know, she's not looking at diets for weight. She's looking at diets for, healing her body. And I said, you can heal on any diet. I said, there is no right diet, because she was so fearful that if she couldn't find the right diet, if she couldn't find the right thing to eliminate these foods and add in these things, that her body would continue to be sick. And the truth is that there is no right magic bullet pill when it comes to food, when it comes to our bodies. Some people do better on a vegetarian plan. Some people do better with high fat. Some people do better eating a lot of meat. Some people do better at eating a lot of vegetables. Some people, are great at eating first thing in the morning. Some people don't like to eat first thing in the morning. Some people eat late dinners. Some people eat early dinners. Like, it's all subjective. But out there, if we put all of our trust in who is out there, they're going to tell us that this is right and this is wrong. And we get into this hamster wheel cycle of always trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing, because God forbid we're wrong. And then, again, we don't belong. We're ostracized from the clan, and ultimately that equals death. It's weighty. But if you take out this wrong or right, good or bad, and you just intuitively connect, what do I want to eat today? What is my body craving? What does it need to nourish itself? How does my body want to move? What sounds fun? What sounds enjoyable? What feels like it's going to give me energy? It's a totally different experience. And then it's like, fine if you eat a cookie or pizza or nachos, because it's not boiled down to one decision. It takes the pressure off of that. So the last area where this good and bad way of thinking really doesn't work is in our feelings. Now, in order to live fully alive, which I talk so much about and that I live myself, we have to experience a broad range of emotions. Like, y'all know, if you follow me on Instagram and watch my Instagram stories, you know that I am not like happy, go lucky all the time. Like, I go through the range of emotions. There are days that I'm angry. There are days that I am feeling depressed or tired or exhausted or frustrated or resentful. Like, your stuff comes up when you don't stuff, when you don't numb, when you don't block. Your emotions are going to come up. And there's days where I feel elated. There's days when I'm just so full of gratitude I can hardly stand it. That the love is just like oozing out of every single cell of my body. But it's the wave of emotions. And what happens is when we live in good and bad thinking in our emotions and in our feelings, all of a sudden it's not okay to feel angry. All of a sudden it's all this pressure to feel happy all the time. And so we kind of lose touch actually with how we truly feel, because we have these sort of sanctioned emotions and then we have these unsanctioned emotions. So I want to know from you guys, those of you who are watching, which emotions do you feel like are unsanctioned or that in your mind you've deemed as bad? I'm just curious, because I know for me, like, anger was a bad emotion. I was not allowed to feel angry. Especially as a woman in the South, I was not allowed to feel angry. So what is it for you guys? Think about your emotions, the range of emotions. Are there any emotions that you feel like are quote unquote bad emotions that you kind of maybe always stuff or feel like you have to stuff? Maybe you're working through that, but your knee-jerk reaction is to push those down. What emotion is that for you? Just type in the comments below so I can see that from you guys. But when we begin to judge ourselves every single time that we have a quote unquote bad emotion, we repress, we stuff. And if we think that it's, being depressed or being sad, or Jim, you said fear, Debbie, you said anger, frustration, all of a sudden we think that if we feel depressed or if we feel sad, or if we feel angry, that makes us a depressed person. That makes us an angry person. That makes us a fearful person, a frustrated person. And those people out there who are depressed, sad, whatever, aren't good people. That's not something that we really want. And so again, our value, our worth is on the line. And so this good and bad thinking sets us up for massive failure. Whitney, you said you can't actually pinpoint an emotion, almost like a confident thing. I was called bitchy or snobby or bossy. Yeah, totally. And I can so identify with that too. Like when you're using your voice, when you're speaking up, then all of a sudden that is a bad way of showing up. So it doesn't even have to be the exact emotion. It's like how you show up as a person. Even maybe if you're using your voice or if you have an opinion, that makes you a bad person, a bitchy person, a snobby person, a bossy person. Totally. Like I can totally resonate with that. I feel like I lived the majority of my life in that fear that somebody would define me as that if I stood up and used my voice. So how do we begin ultimately then to decide what is right for us? Like if we want to have some kind of a framework that's helpful for us, where we aren't always just kind of going by our emotions, but we are, anchored into some wisdom. We're anchored into, our true selves, our soul's purpose and our destiny and what we value. How do we begin to decide what's right for me? We have to start with the idea, the belief that there is no right or wrong. Okay, there is no right or wrong for the majority of what we deal with in life, for our business, for our relationships, from our bodies and food to ultimately our feelings and emotions. There is no right or wrong. It just is. It's just our experience. Until we attach meaning to that, it's not right or it's not wrong. That right or wrong interpretation is subjective, depending on who you are, how you were raised, where you live. So how can we ultimately, though, define what is right for me? So I think there are 4 ways that allow us to really connect to what is right for us individually and personally. And the first is to get to neutral. So when we're making decisions, when we're in a situation where we are trying to decide what we should do, what's right, what's wrong, is this good, does this make me good, or does this make me bad? We got to kind of slow it down and get to neutral by helping our minds know that there is no right or wrong. So if we are in the middle of a decision and we say, okay, if I didn't attach meaning to this decision, if there was no right or wrong, how would I approach this decision? Like, for example, so I am going to Italy in a couple weeks to visit my sister who is currently living there. And we were deciding on Airbnbs to book. And there were some that were a little bit more expensive, some that were cheaper. And I was like really having this like total come apart on whether or not to book a place that was a little bit cheaper. And I'm like, I just don't want to make the wrong decision. Because if I make the wrong decision, if I choose the more expensive place at the Airbnb, then all of a sudden in my mind, this is not true, but this is what it felt like. All of a sudden, I'm not going to have money for a down payment on a house. All of a sudden, I'm not going to have money for my wedding. All of a sudden, I'm not going to have money to do the things that I want to do, and I can't travel. And it was like in that one moment, my whole life of my financial stability was flashing in front of my eyes, and I felt like if I made the wrong decision on this Airbnb, I was going to be flat out broke and not have any money. It's not true. That is not true. And what I realized is, and I was going, okay, well, is this fear or is this wisdom? Is this fear or is this wisdom? And so I said, okay, if there was no right or wrong decision to be made, that if my financial stability wasn't on the line, what would I do? And I kind of did the math, and it was going to be like $600 more. And so I said, okay, the truth is I'm living in scarcity right now. The truth is that if somebody were to go tell me today, Mary, can you go out and make $600 today? I'd probably go out and make $1,000. Or if somebody said, hey, Mary, can you go out and make $1,000? I probably could go figure out a way to make $3,000 today. I'm fully resourceful, fully capable. And I was existing in scarcity. So I had to get myself to a neutral spot. I had to really get to the place where I was going, okay, what rules am I creating that aren't really rules? And the rule that I was creating is, if I screw up this decision, then I have no business handling money. That was a rule. That was a belief. And I have to understand, where am I getting stuck in this good and bad mentality? What rules am I creating that aren't really rules? So getting to neutral. If I don't do this, I am bad. Or if I do this, I am bad. Or if I don't do this, I will be punished. Or if I do this, I will be punished by God, by the universe, that he's going to take all my money away. That all of a sudden I'm going to be, dead broke, right? This is what I felt like was. I'm going to do the same. I don't know what's. Okay. Sorry. I don't know why we lost connection there. But ultimately, this is where we are really kind of at that place where we got to figure out, okay, where is that neutral spot for me where I can make a decision without all that weight? That's the first way to begin to decide what is right for you. Now, the second way is to define your anchoring non-negotiables. Now, this is one that I really love to talk about because it's kind of a concept I created. That an anchoring non-negotiable is something that is a value that you hold that is non-negotiable. So for me, like maybe love is an anchoring non-negotiable. Like for me, I will always approach everything with deep love. That is a value that I hold near and dear to my heart. Now, maybe you have the golden rule, always say something nice about other people. Maybe you have a few based on your beliefs, based on the way that you choose to live your life, that you have these things that you feel like are right and are wrong. Like I know for me, I will never say consciously a racial remark. I will never make fun of somebody or talk down to somebody based on their race, based on their economic standing, based on their education. That to me is an anchoring non-negotiable. That to me is the right thing to do. And so for me, like, judging somebody based on appearance, based on their education, based on their financial status, I don't do that. I don't play that game. And for people who are in my life, that if they say something that is a comment that is racist or demeaning or abusive, I have zero tolerance for that. Okay, so that is like an anchoring non-negotiable for me. So as you're trying to decide what is right for me, you have to first define, okay, what are the rules that I've been living in under currently? Where have I been saying that this is good and this is bad, and actually I don't want to have that anymore? And then this is where you get to have fun and you get to define what are your anchoring non-negotiables. What are the things that you say, no, this is right for me, this is wrong for me? And everybody has the right to define those for themselves. So define your anchoring non-negotiable values. All right, the third way to begin to decipher what is right for you is to connect with your intuition, to connect with your soul, and to ultimately ask, is this in alignment with my highest self, with the integrity of my soul, with those non-negotiable values? So when you're in that moment of making a decision and you take off the traditional right and wrong, you take off the traditional good or bad, but you say, is this in alignment? Is this in alignment with my soul? With my highest good, with the integrity of who I am? Is this in alignment? So kind of what I think about is like your spine, okay? So if your spine, here's up and down spine, this is the alignment of your soul. Like when you're in alignment, you're like clicking through life. Like you got that synchronicity going, things are just coming into fruition. That's really incredible because you are in alignment with your destiny, with who you were created to be. And we know that on a deep level. You know when something's funky. You know when something's not quite right. So when you're out of alignment, it's like a disc, a bulging disc, and that creates pain, that creates suffering. And so in each decision, am I in alignment? Does this feel true to me? Does this feel right to me? Is this in alignment with my integrity? And so that is the third way that we begin to say, is this the right decision for me? We can ask ourselves, kind of like channel in, tap into our intuition. Am I in alignment? Am I in alignment? And then, actually, okay, let me just think through this. I was going to give an example. But But you got it. I think you got it. Okay. So the fourth way here, I think, is really great. And this is to ask yourself the question when you're making those decisions, when you're releasing right or wrong, asking, is this coming from fear? Just like I did with that Italy scenario. Is this coming from fear? Am I making this decision because I'm afraid that I'm going to be punished? That everything will be taken from me? That, like, on a visceral, deep, like, gut level, am I afraid that God is going to punish me, or the universe isn't going to give me what I want? Am I operating out of fear at the end of the day? That's a big question to ask. And that helps you to know whether the decision that you're making is right for you or not. Because if you're making your decision out of fear, then you can be pretty sure that that's not in alignment with your soul. As my friend Tracy says all the time, she's like, fear doesn't get a vote in this decision. Fear does not get a vote in this decision. So we have to slow it down and ask, is this right? Is this wrong? But not out of a place of fear, out of a place of, is this in alignment with my soul? And so at the end of the day, we have to work on a trust relationship with ourselves, asking ourselves, what is best for myself in this moment? Offering ourselves like incredible amount of grace, incredible amount of empathy, because as my friend Nick Hendrick says to me all the time, everyone has a great reason for doing what they do. None of us go out into the world thinking like, how can I like make a horrible decision today? How can I, F up my life? How can I, screw this up? Nobody's operating from that place unless we're so rigid that, we've got to rebel. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what decision you make. Take the pressure off, because you in this moment are completely and wholly lovable. You in this moment are so unconditionally loved that I think it would blow your mind if you really got that on such a deep level. You cannot screw it up. No matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, no matter how many mistakes you make or stupid things that you do, you can't screw it up. It is so much bigger than that this idea of perfection, this idea that we have to be good all the time and make sure that we're making all the right decisions, or else we're ostracized, or else it equals death. That perfection is a complete illusion. And I love this quote by Cheryl Strayed. She said, "What if I forgave myself?" I thought. What if I forgave myself even though I'd done something I shouldn't have? What if I was a liar and a cheat, and there was no excuse for what I'd done other than because it was what I wanted and needed to do? What if I was sorry, but if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do anything differently than I had done? What if yes was the right answer instead of no? What if what made me do all those things everyone thought I shouldn't have done was what also had got me here? What if I was never redeemed? What if I already was? That, to me, is a beautiful and powerful question to ask. What if I didn't have to do all of the right things and be this good girl? What if I could take that pressure off, and instead the motivation was to be in alignment with my soul's highest good, with the integrity of who I am? Because that, when we're in alignment, that doesn't have any suffering in it, because we're in alignment. The alignment comes when we're trying to do everything else that we think we should do, that what somebody says is good or somebody says we shouldn't do, that's good or bad or right or wrong or evil. What if we could tap into that higher part of ourselves that deeply knows what is right for us, that is in our true best interest and the best interest of others? That I believe that we know that we are good people, and that we can connect to that soul voice inside of ourselves. So I encourage you to challenge those rules that you've created for yourself. I encourage you to challenge that good and bad thinking when it comes to your business, when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to the relationship to your body and to food, and to the relationship with your emotions. That you can kind of free yourself up from a lot of that pressure, I think is so vital, so important. And ultimately, you can't screw it up. Just tell yourself that over again. You can't screw it up in business and life, with your body, with your relationships. You can't screw it up. It's bigger than this. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than that one decision. And that you having the right intention and the purity of heart, that's what counts. Staying in character, that's what counts. Staying in alignment with love, that's what counts. Not all these little decisions here and there and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. No matter what horrible things you've done, all of that, you're covered. You're good. You cannot screw up your destiny. So I will leave you with that. And I hope that you will follow me on Facebook. And of course, I want to make sure to encourage you to download my free resource, Love Your Body Affirmation Cheat Sheet, that will help you create step-by-step affirmations to love your body, to create a new dialogue with your body. The link is right at the top of this video. You just click on it, enter your email address. This is delivered straight into your inbox for free. And it's super awesome. It's beautiful. I love it. And I know that it's going to be helpful for you. But I will see you guys next week. Super excited about our episode next week. So stay tuned for the announcements on that. But I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week. And as always, the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. Talk to you guys next week. Bye.